Have you ever finished a book and thought, whoa, this like really changed how I see things?
Oh, totally.
That happened to me with Extreme Ownership, and I knew we had to dive into this one together.
It's definitely a book that sticks with you.
It really is. It's by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. They're former
Mhm.
Navy SEALs.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so fascinating is that they take what they learned in combat, like literally life or death stuff, and apply it to leading any team.
Yeah.
Business, sports, even just your personal life.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's what draws people in.
Right. It's like those high-stakes situations really forge these principles.
Okay, so let's get into it. The core idea is extreme ownership, and it sounds intense.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean, like in practice?
Basically, it means that as a leader, you take 100% responsibility, no excuses.
Oh.
And it's not just about taking credit when things go well. It's
Yeah.
about owning up when things go wrong, too.
And they have this really powerful example from the Battle of Ramadi, which was one of the toughest battles in the Iraq War. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so Willink and Babin were leading a SEAL team in this incredibly dangerous urban environment, and they were facing constant setbacks,
Wow.
challenges everywhere. And what's so striking is they never pointed fingers at their team or the enemy or even the circumstances.
Yeah.
You know, they really looked inward and asked, what could we have done differently?
Huh. It makes you think about how we usually handle things when a project at work goes off track or you miss a deadline.
Right.
It's easy to focus on who's to blame instead of thinking, okay, what was my part in this? What could I have done better?
Yeah, it's a complete mindset shift.
100%.
And that's really the essence of extreme ownership. It's about being accountable, pushing yourself to improve, and seeing setbacks as learning opportunities.
Not as failures.
Not as failures, exactly. It's about growth.
And that shift in perspective is huge. And it leads us to their next big idea, which is there are no bad teams, only bad leaders.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So what are they saying with that?
They're saying that a team's success ultimately comes down to the leadership. They actually prove this by turning around struggling SEAL teams.
Wow.
Just by focusing on clear communication, setting high expectations, and truly leading by example.
So instead of blaming individuals, you're saying it's about helping them reach their potential.
Exactly. Creating an environment where they can thrive.
So how did they actually do that? Like, how do they turn those struggling teams around?
Well, one of the first things they did was focus on clarity. They made sure everyone on the team understood the mission, their individual roles, and like what was expected of them.
Okay, so really crystal clear communication.
Yeah, and then they provided a lot of constructive feedback and coaching.
Got it.
Really helped build their team members' skills and their confidence.
That's something any leader can do.
Right. Absolutely.
Whether you're running a company, coaching a team, or just managing a project, your leadership impacts how the team performs.
Big time.
Yeah.
And, you know, that focus on the team actually connects really well with the idea of decentralized command.
Decentralized command. That sounds a little counterintuitive.
Yeah.
We usually think of leadership as top-down, the leader making all the calls.
Sure.
So how does that fit in?
Okay, so think about the SEALs.
Yeah.
In combat, the commanders can't possibly micromanage every decision.
Right.
They have to rely on their teams to operate independently and make judgments on the fly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do you translate that to a business setting?
Well, it's about moving from control to empowerment, right? You delegate responsibility.
Okay.
You give people the freedom to make decisions in their areas of expertise, and you really work on building trust.
So it's not about giving up control completely.
It's not, no.
It's about setting the team up to succeed.
Exactly. It's creating the conditions where they can take ownership, be innovative, and really excel.
Which brings us to cover and move, right?
Right.
Which is such a vivid term.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's a military term, and it literally means how teams protect each other in combat.
Right. Literally covering each other's backs.
Yeah. But the takeaway for any team is about collaboration and unwavering support.
It makes me think about those times when you're struggling with a project and you hit a wall.
Yeah.
But knowing you have teammates who will support you, who have your back, it changes everything.
It makes all the difference.
It lets you take risks, be more creative.
Absolutely. And it's essential for decentralized command to work.
How so?
Well, when everyone understands their role and trusts that their teammates have their back, they can operate independently while still working together towards the same goal.
Got it. So we've covered extreme ownership, no bad teams, only bad leaders, decentralized command, and cover and move. What other key principles do they highlight?
One that really stood out to me was simplicity.
Okay, why is that so important, especially under pressure?
Because when things get too complicated, that's when confusion and mistakes happen. Especially when you have a lot of information coming at you or things are changing rapidly.
Wow.
Willink and Babin learned in the SEALs that clear, simple plans were absolutely essential in combat.
So it's not about oversimplifying. It's about making things actionable.
You got it. It's about distilling complex ideas into steps that everyone understands.
Right. It's about clarity and focus.
Exactly.
Oh.
And that brings us to prioritize and execute.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It is.
Yeah.
So just like SEALs have to adapt on the battlefield and zero in on the most urgent tasks, leaders in any field have to be able to identify the high priority problems.
And use their resources wisely.
Yes, and execute those solutions decisively.
This is really helpful. Thinking about my own work, I often get bogged down with having too much on my to-do list. Learning to prioritize effectively would be a game changer. How do they approach that?
They talk about having a system for identifying the top priority tasks first.
Okay.
Then you create a clear plan to execute those tasks, breaking them down into smaller steps.
Got it.
And this can apply to a military operation, a project at work, or even just organizing your day. It's all about figuring out what really matters and then taking action.
It's like being proactive, not just reacting.
Exactly.
Amazing. Okay, so to recap, the core principles of extreme ownership that we've covered are
Extreme ownership, no bad teams, only bad leaders, decentralized command, cover and move, simplicity, and prioritize and execute.
And what I find so cool is that these ideas can apply to almost any situation where leadership's involved.
Oh,
Whether
yeah.
you're running a company, coaching a team, or just navigating your own life.
Yeah, it's about being effective, accountable, resilient.
And there's still so much to unpack.
Right, we've just scratched the surface.
So stay tuned for part 2 of this deep dive where we'll get into how to actually apply these principles to your own life. We'll be right back.
Looking forward to it.
Me too.
Yeah. Welcome back to our deep dive into extreme ownership.
We've laid out the core principles, but now I want to hear how they work in the real world.
Yeah.
Give me some stories.
Okay, well, the book is packed with incredible stories from the battlefield, that really demonstrate these principles. But one thing that makes extreme ownership so powerful is how they connect those experiences to our everyday lives.
Right.
It's not just for SEALs.
Exactly. It's for everyone.
Yeah, they really emphasize how these principles are just as important in a boardroom meeting as they are in a firefight.
Totally.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. So they have this story about a SEAL platoon that was struggling.
Okay.
And the team kept blaming their failures on a lack of resources and support.
Yeah.
They just didn't have what they needed.
So it would have been easy for the leader to accept those excuses
Right.
and just move on.
Exactly. But he didn't. He embraced that extreme ownership concept.
All
But
right.
he realized that he wasn't communicating effectively with the team. He wasn't providing the guidance or support they needed, and he wasn't setting clear expectations.
So instead of passing the buck, he looked at himself.
Yes.
Wow. That's powerful.
And it had a huge impact on the team.
I bet.
Yeah. He started by making sure everyone understood the mission objectives,
Okay.
their roles and responsibilities.
So back to that clear communication.
Exactly. And then he gave more specific feedback and coaching, which helped his team members build skills and confidence.
What stands out to you about that example?
It seems simple, right?
Yeah.
But clear communication and support are so important for a team to succeed.
It's easy to overlook the basics when things get hectic.
Totally. And that type of leadership, it's crucial for any team to thrive. Another good example is decentralized command,
Okay.
which can be really tough for leaders who are used to, being in control.
I can see that letting go is hard. It takes trust.
Yeah, big time. There's this story in the book about a cell commander who learned this the hard way. He was so focused on every little detail,
Oh, damn.
he created chaos.
That sounds disastrous, especially in combat.
Right.
So how did he fix it?
He realized he had to empower his junior officers to make decisions in the field. He had to trust their judgment, give them autonomy to adapt.
That resonates so much with today's business world, Leaders can't be experts in everything.
Right?
And you can't make every decision yourself. You need to build a culture where people are empowered to solve problems.
And that's where cover and move comes in.
Okay, how so?
Well, when you give people the power to make decisions, they need to know you have their back.
Right, that's psychological safety,
Exactly.
where people feel safe to take risks.
Yeah, they know that if they make a mistake, it's okay.
It's about learning from those mistakes.
Totally.
And that's where simplicity plays a role. Right.
Oh, absolutely.
Keeping things clear reduces the chance of those mistakes happening in the first place.
They have an example where a SEAL team was on this really complex mission,
Hmm.
and they got so bogged down in the details that they lost sight of the big picture.
Ah, so they overanalyzed it.
Totally. They learn that it's so important to break down complex tasks into smaller steps and to communicate clearly.
Right. Everyone needs to be on the same page.
Yeah, everyone understanding their role and how it fits into the overall goal.
And then you can prioritize and execute.
Right. Focus on those critical tasks and take action.
But there's so much going on these days. How do they say we should prioritize?
They emphasize having a system,
Okay.
something to identify those truly essential tasks.
So a to-do list.
Yeah, or
Mhm.
a calendar that maps out your goals, whatever works for you.
It's about being proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. You're taking control.
You become the designer
Yes.
of your day, your week, your life.
And what's so cool about extreme ownership is that it's not just about, traditional success.
What do you mean?
It's about becoming a better leader for yourself, too.
Oh, I like that.
Like taking ownership of your own life.
Your choices, your actions, your happiness.
Yes, you hit it right on the head. But knowing these principles is just the start.
Right.
Putting them into practice is where the real magic happens.
Which is a perfect segue into the final part of our deep dive.
Let's do it.
I'm excited to hear how we can use these ideas in our own lives.
We'll dive into that right after the break.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about the powerful ideas in extreme ownership.
Yeah, some really great stuff.
And now I want to know how we can actually put these principles into practice, in our everyday lives.
It's one thing to understand it, but actually living it is a whole other thing.
Yeah, and it's a little daunting to think about, embracing extreme ownership in every area of your life.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin?
It is a journey, not a destination. And like with any kind of personal growth, I think the first step is awareness.
Okay, like that.
Start paying attention to how you react when you face challenges or setbacks.
Mhm.
Are you quick to blame others or make excuses? Or do you stop and ask yourself, what could I have done differently? What was my role?
It's about recognizing those patterns, right?
Exactly, those knee-jerk reactions. And then challenging yourself to take responsibility, even when it feels tough.
Yeah, totally. So what are some concrete things our listeners can start doing?
Well, one of the biggest things they emphasize in the book is clear communication,
Right.
like being concise and consistent.
Because so many problems come from miscommunication.
Oh, absolutely. So make an effort to be more intentional with how you communicate, like in all areas of your life. Emails, meetings, even just conversations with family.
Yeah.
Slow down, think about what you're saying, make sure it's being received the way you meant it.
It's a small tweak, but it makes such a difference.
Yeah,
And it really connects with that simplicity principle.
you got it. Remember, when things get too complex, that's when the confusion starts.
Right.
So try to keep things simple and straightforward,
Yeah.
whether you're explaining a task, making a plan, or just setting expectations.
And that clarity and empowerment, it all ties into decentralized command, right? We can't and shouldn't do everything ourselves,
Exactly. It's about empowering those around you, trusting them to make decisions.
which I imagine is tough for some leaders.
Oh, it can be, yeah, letting go of that control. But the book stresses that it's not about giving up responsibility entirely.
Okay.
It's about being super clear about what you expect, providing the support and resources people need, and then trusting them to get it done.
And when you have that trust, that's when cover and move can really happen. Like teams become more cohesive, resilient.
Yeah, because they know they have each other's backs.
It reminds me of when I played team sports, knowing your teammates there to support you.
Yeah.
It gives you that confidence to push yourself.
It's a great analogy. That feeling of mutual support makes all the difference. And finally, let's talk about prioritize and execute. In today's world, it's so easy to feel overwhelmed, right?
Ugh, yes.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. I constantly feel like I have too much on my plate.
We all do. And that's why having a system for prioritizing and focusing on what's most important is essential.
Okay, so how do we do that?
The book suggests something simple, like a prioritized to-do list or a calendar that outlines your main objectives.
So instead of just reacting to everything,
Right, you become more proactive.
like you're the one designing your day, your week, your life.
Exactly.
Mm.
You're taking ownership of your time and energy, making sure it aligns with your goals. And remember, extreme ownership isn't just about external success. It's also about being a better leader for yourself.
Oh, I love that.
It's taking ownership of your life, your choices, your actions, your happiness.
It's about showing up intentionally, responsibly.
Yes, exactly. So to wrap up our deep dive into extreme ownership, I want to leave you with this. Think about one area of your life, work, relationships, personal growth. Where can you start practicing extreme ownership?
Hmm.
What's one step you can take today to be more responsible and become a better leader in your own life? That's something to think about.
Such a great question, and I encourage all of our listeners to really reflect on that.
Right.
Because as we've learned, the path to a more fulfilling life starts with taking responsibility for ourselves and our actions. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an amazing conversation.
Until next time.